So one, just to kick this off, is what we're going to try and do here is bring on subject matter experts almost weekly if we can, um, to just whatever it is that we think. And so anything y'all want that we don't have in the community, let's talk about it and let's try to get those people in here. I am going to be doing, Jackie, when is it? On next, not this Wednesday, but next, I'm going to start doing like just a group call with me. I'll either do a teaching or I'll answer questions. We have to figure out the format of it. We're trying to build this community. Obviously, everyone on here has full access to me, but the people in the community won't. So there'll be like a weekly call. This is so funny. I did that on the call. I did that on the summit actually when I was speaking.
Hey.
Yeah, I think it's like two thumbs up does that. I can't remember. Hold on. There it is.
Yep.
So anyway, on that note, that's what this is all about. So Lyra's absolutely amazing. She's got this Mother Earth energy and she knows how important it is to rest when writing a book, even though she's a gangster and doesn't rest herself and I have to yell at her. Um, and so we're going to talk about the moon cycles and we're going to talk a little bit about what else? Can't remember what you said. Sorry, I'm losing track. Jackie, what was it? Moon cycles
The balance, the masculine, feminine.
and then masculine and feminine. Sorry, which you know how much I love that. So, because that's all what the longevity is all about. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over. Do you want me to spotlight you? We're all good here with six people. You don't need to be spotlighted. Do you want to?
I get to
No.
talk. That's a spotlight enough, right?
All right, I'm gonna turn my audio off and we're gonna kick.
All
Oh, I'm
right.
gonna press record because
Press it again.
bam.
There we go. Um, Hi. So my name is Sierra Melcher. As Mark said, I'm a member of this community. I'm one of Mark's clients. I'm one of Mark's friends. And we actually were introduced, again, as Jackie was speaking about synchronicities, through a beautiful synchronicity where we can see your lap. There you go. Where I was working with an author because I run a publishing company, and she said, "You live in Medellin, Colombia? My coach lives in Medellin, Colombia." And so Mark and I got to have lunch in May, in person for the first time, and then we've just been jiving ever since. So he and I talk about all sorts of things. One of the things that lights me up the most, and I use to support my authors while they're in the writing process, while we're in the publishing process, and then all authors essentially become authorpreneurs. Like, how do you take this book that you've made and amplify and really get your message into the hands of the people who need it and earn money? Right? We want to make an impact, but whether we're comfortable saying it or not, I want everybody working to also make a profit. So you end up running a business one way or another. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of creation. And I've written a number of books and published many books, including today being the published date for our 58th nonfiction book in under 4 years. Thank you. Thank you. Um, it's hit #1 bestseller in 3 categories in France, and it's doing pretty well in the United States, paperback, ebook, all the things. And we talk about a book like a baby. And if you have ever attempted to write a book or run a business, has its own life cycle. It cries in the middle of the night. Oops. There's a lot of metaphor translations between any kind of creation. And all creation requires masculine and feminine energy. However, culturally, societally, we're we are explicitly taught that productivity, external creation, get shit done, work longer, work harder, yes, work smarter, but that doesn't mean we're still not working 60, 80, 90-hour weeks, busting our butts, especially as entrepreneurs. Like, we're doing bookkeeping, we're doing hiring, we're doing sales calls, we're doing delivery, we're doing everything. And that's a lot of masculine energy. And I want to talk about masculine energy and feminine energy and how we can use these together to create more without just feeling super drained and feeling really one-sided. I'm going to link it to the moon, I'm going to link it to the seasons, partially as metaphor and partially as a recipe, so that anybody who, all of you on this call, we could talk about it, we can discuss and share, but also anybody who ever listens to this can start accessing another way. Because it's possible. Sure, I'm a badass. Like Mark said, I can just keep working. I can keep doing. I can write a book at 2 o'clock in the morning. I can do it. I've done it. Do I want to live my whole life that way? Not really. Is it the best of what I have to offer and the best way to honor myself? Also not really. So before I dive in, I actually want to just begin with a common definition of masculine and feminine. First of all, we're so gendered in our thinking that we think masculine and feminine is male and female. Male and female refers to biology, genitalia, reproductive styles, not the same. Every human has both masculine and feminine energy. We have access to it. We have it. We are the combination of masculine and feminine, and we can be the expression of masculine and feminine. Archetypally, masculine energy includes things like logic, timelines, external creation, providing and protecting. What else? People can hop in and help me. Like, masculine energy is represented by what?
Execution, it's drive, it's
deadlines,
completion.
Right? Okay, these are really powerful things in business,
All the
in
doing.
writing, all the doing, get shit done, right? But I also, if you write things down, I want you to write this down. Masculine energy is provide and protect. In its best iteration and expression, masculine, a healthy, beautiful masculine energy is providing and protecting. That should prompt a question in you. What are we providing? And who are we providing for? What are we protecting? And this is where feminine comes in. Feminine energy in its best is aligned, inspired, passionate. It's inspiration. Receiving and nurturing. It's both a receiving and a loving space. And arguably, I don't want to get into the weeds here, but there's maternal energy, which is actually in between. And maternal is more nurturing. Feminine is more inspired, delicious, and definitely in the receiving space. I struggle with this, but that's part of what we're here to talk about, right? What we're great at and what we want to get better at. So we each have this. We each have both. We don't have them in 50-50 act. Like most of us are probably skewed. Both because culturally we're taught to be more masculine. All of us are taught to be masculine because we need to get shit done, right? So I'm going to embody more of the masculine qualities. But if I am chasing a dream, if I am building something, if, like Mark said, I am the doing, what's informing that doing? Mark is a little snarky, which I also appreciate. But if we are chasing a dream, if we are building an empire, if we are writing a book, if we are doing any damn thing, why? What for? What is the inspiration underneath that's informing it? What is the dream that we are creating? Anybody ever met somebody who, I don't know, got an entire degree and then was like, but I don't really like what I studied. I did it because somebody else thought I should, or because I thought I should, or because I thought it would make somebody happy. I thought it would make me happy. And here I am, I'm done. And I'm just, it's a no. That is a perfect expression of masculine without the informed feminine We're not, yeah, you can do anything. You can write a book, you can run a business, you can build a house. Do you want that business? Do you want that house? Are you writing a book because somebody told you you should, or because you give a damn? The whole process will be different and the product will be different. The experience will be fundamentally different. So, spoiler alert, my message in a nutshell is, let's make sure that we have enough feminine, access to the feminine, understanding of the feminine to inform our fundamentally badass masculine energy, so that we're creating and pouring our power into something that we want, to make something that we enjoy. And so the process is fabulous along the way. Everybody agree with me on that basic premise? We're okay, we're on the same page. Okay. So we agree with the concept, but then there's this sort of how, right? A great idea. Okay, bye, good luck. We don't live in a society that talks about how to access the feminine, how to tap into or align with inspiration, passion, desire, to figure out what you give a damn about. I sometimes sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a dream board. And not my third eye, but my like prefrontal cortex is analyzing all of the assessing, all of the masculine weighing, measuring. Oh, well, I was at a conference and so said that they make this much money. And so I'm going to try to make this much money too. Do I want the life that is required of me to get those things? Do I want to wake up in the morning and do a day like that? Doesn't even matter, because I've already decided, and I'll go. My masculine like takes the idea and runs with it like a dog with a bone. And 6 years later, I'm like, wait a minute. No. But if we slow down, I'm still talking to myself too, just in case anyone, I'm not preaching. This is me hearing what I need to say. If I slow down and check that before I implement it and go 10,000 miles an hour, like, you know what, actually, I don't. Right? Even the dog in the background doesn't. He's like, no, dog with a bone? Yeah. I want to check every inspiration before it goes through, because my brain is really good at convincing me. It's like 3 steps ahead and says, hey, look, here's the thing, go chase it. But it's not informed by the feminine, because we work too damn hard and we don't know how to slow down. So how do we access the feminine, and how do we integrate the feminine into a regular process? Recognizing that this is something probably pretty new for all of us, and so it's going to be hard. This is a muscle that you have maybe never flexed before. I got a trainer at the beginning of this year, and I am in South America, and he's like, you have no butt. Like nothing. No muscles in there. I was like, but I can climb stairs. He's like, yeah, I know, but you're using other muscles. You're doing the thing. It looks like you're doing the thing, but you're using the wrong muscles. And so I share that example. My butt is much better, by the way, now, but it took me a long time, and I couldn't figure out why I was using the wrong muscles. But we're using our masculine muscles to try to be feminine, and we get in the wrong place. Okay. I'm trying. So how do we access the feminine, and how do we know it's not our masculine trying to be feminine? Pull one over on us. Okay. And this is where, Jackie, this is where the moon phases and the seasons can become really great metaphors, but also external indicators, reminders to be in flux. Masculine energy, especially if you have been doing it for a while, is like the longest day of summer. every day of the year. And while we're ragging on winter, that's another one. I mean, yeah, it's cold. But what if cold were that invitation to slow down? The reminder to rest and reflect. But here we are, we're like, it should just be summer. It should be light all day long. It should be summer every day so that it can just keep working and just keep chasing and just keep delivering, because productivity is the only valuable thing in a society. Nope. So draw a circle. At the top, winter. At the bottom, summer, spring and fall. Okay. Also at the top, new moon. At the bottom, full moon. And then, in case you don't know what they're called, waxing is when the moon is getting bigger, and waning is when the moon is getting smaller. So waxing is like spring, and waning is like autumn. Everybody sort of with me? Okay. Because I'm going to just talk about seasons and moon phases intermittently, sporadically. And I want you to have a sense. You know the symbols for masculine and feminine, because we're going to mark each of these seasons and phases again. Winter and the new moon is feminine. Summer and the full moon is also feminine. So the top and the bottom of your circle is feminine. Spring and autumn are both masculine. And this whole cycle is a circle, but year after year, month after month, it's actually a spiral. Like the Fibonacci sequence, where we actually know a little bit more than we did the last time we were here, rather than our perceived straight line. 45-degree angle. I am here and I want to be here and I want to be there yesterday. Nope. We are growing, we are learning, but we're not in a straight line. We are in a evolving, expanding spiral. Okay. But the straight line thinking, first of all, makes us feel like shit because we're not where we think we're supposed to be. We're measuring ourselves against some external standard. But it also doesn't recognize the flux. Women menstruate on a lunar cycle. And so we hormonally change in alignment with the moon. Men also actually have a hormonal cycle. It's on a 24-hour clock and not a 28-hour day, month. So every day, men go through this hormonal flux. There might be 2 hours where they're high and 2 hours where they're low, but it's not 3 days where everyone calls them a bitch because they are burnt out and exhausted. And they're, and it's much more subtle. The masculine hormonal flux is like this, and the female hormonal flux is like this. Okay. I share all of these because there's so many ways that this interplays, but I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about writing a book because this is my zone of genius. It's what I do. But I'm also going to link how it is like running a business. So we're starting at the top, winter, the new moon, feminine. Okay. You have an idea, an inspiration, a whisper. Okay. Whispers cannot be heard at a rave. You need to be quiet. You need to slow down so that you can hear that. What if it were like this? You're like, oh, I hear it. Okay. And then it becomes possible. And we're excited. That is feminine. All ideas come from the feminine energy. The next phase, so inspiration for me is at the top. You get an idea about a book, about a business, about a retreat you want to host, about a trip you want to go on, doesn't matter. The next phase is masculine. Okay, it's spring. It's planning. You cannot go from idea to execution without even briefly figuring out, how the hell am I going to do this? Where, when, what time, with who, how much money is it going to cost? Okay. When we're writing a book, I talk about planning a bunch of different things. Planning, when in your day are you going to write this book? Where are you going to sit? Is it going to be at this desk? Is it going to be at a coffee shop? Is it going to be at a co-working space? Is it going to be at 6 o'clock in the morning or 2 a.m.? When do you have quiet time and space? But then planning the content of the book, it's also really important. What are you going to talk about? Who are you writing to? Who's your audience? If it's a business, who's your audience? What's the service? What are you providing? There's so much forethought that goes into it before you don't just start a business. Even when I just started a business, I found out I was pregnant. I moved to a new city. I opened a yoga studio with zero business training. I shudder. Zero market research. But I still thought about things. I needed to find a place. I needed to give it a name and a logo and a website. So that's masculine energy. That is providing for a dream. Okay. There's analysis, there's structure, there's evaluation. There's how do we go from here to here? So powerful, and I love it. Then we go into what's the summer? It's the doing. It is actually doing energy, but it's not masculine in that it's, let's just go try it. Like, I don't care if it's good. When we're writing the shitty first draft, when you sketch out the idea on a napkin, that's inspired action, but it's the doing that echoes the inspiration. It echoes the idea. Does that make sense a little bit? Does it make sense that it's feminine because it's channeled more or less? It's fluid. It just happens without, it's not perfect.
Like testing, right?
Yeah, it's a beta test. It's the minimum viable product. It's just the go for it, right? It's that I made a plan. Now let's see what happens, right? And then we go back into autumn, masculine evaluation, revision, reflection on how did that experiment go? We debrief at the end of a workshop. How many people came? Mark, we were talking about this, all of those metrics. It's one thing to have the idea to do the workshop and then plan the workshop and promote it. And then you host the workshop. It won't be any different next month if I don't look at all the metrics. What went well? What didn't go well? What will I change? What will I tweak? What will I never do again? Right? And that is like the harvesting. I'm mixing metaphors all over the place, just in case you find the one that works for you, right? But you had an idea, you planted a seed, you let it grow, and now you harvest. What came from it? Did I close a client? Cool. We're writing a book. What am I going to keep? What am I going to get rid of? But then we go right back to winter and we rest again. And so winter is resting. It's slowing down it's not slowing down to plan. It's not slowing down to debrief. It's just slowing down because that in itself has value. Anybody have an automatic reaction to that? No, but what am I supposed to be doing while I'm resting? Right?
Not scrolling on social.
That is not, well,
That's
so
not resting.
it's not resting. It's avoidance and it feels like slowing down. And so I'm going to talk about this cycle again, because we're not going to talk about a circular cycle in a line. We're going to talk about it in a couple of different ways and a couple of different times. Because what I want each of you to be able to walk away with is, okay, so I get the idea, but then I want you to personalize it and figure out how over the next 28 days or the whole next year, how will I access each of these 4 energies? It's masculine, feminine, but they're iterations of the masculine and feminine. And so I want you to think where you find inspiration. What are you doing when you find that alignment? Is it yoga? Is it in a hammock? Are you cooking? Are you folding laundry? Like, there are activities that you can do that don't require, they're like autopilot. Is it in the shower? Some people do this resting energy on a run because it's the only way that they can disconnect from their brain and that constant brain thing. For me, resting involves a lot fewer calories than a run. But cooking, a walk, sitting in nature, taking a bath, right? Journaling, there's a lot of things that you can tap into this feminine energy. And I want you to make a list. What circumstances helped you the last time you were inspired? Because I want you to have a recipe. Or like, I'm feeling burnt, or I want to open up for the next idea. It's not an accident. It's not just, I had an author come to me recently and she's like, well, I just haven't felt inspired. I was like, bullshit. This is not something, inspiration is not a truck that comes and hits you. You need to create the circumstances for alignment. It's not a coincidence. I mean, it happens coincidentally occasionally, but you can absolutely front load inspiration. You can, what's the word? You can make it happen. Okay. But you need a list of ideas. I love to cook, but I also love to eat. But cooking involves following a recipe, and I'm just sort of in one place for a couple of hours. I'm doing methodical things, and I can find the flow state that the psychologist Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, I love his name, but I can't pronounce it. Flow is where you're doing something and you lose time and you're just in it, painting, music, physical activity, or really mindless tasks. Folding laundry is fantastic because you just do it without thinking about it, and your mind can take you to the place. What if the television's on and you're listening to a podcast? Driving is my favorite. There's not a lot of wide open roads in Colombia, but I love being in the United States because it takes 45 minutes to get anywhere. Right, Kathy? They're like, oh God, fantastic. Okay. Get into the flow. And so I want you to be writing what you think your recipe can be. You don't have to get this 100% right, because this whole thing is a cycle of experiments of like, if I do this, does it open me up? If I do this, do I feel rejuvenated? If I do this, am I like ready for the rest of the world? I actually got into this cycle through my menstruation cycle. And I get that there's men and women in this community, and not everybody likes hearing about the fact that women have female bodies, but just this is my reality. When I took 1 or 2 days a month to slow down, I also a week later could get 10 days worth of work done every day for a week. And so we think, oh, I'm not being productive. I want you to change your definition of productive, because we sleep every day. Yeah, you sleep for like 7 hours. You could be getting shit done in those 7 hours, but we all recognize that in order to be effective tomorrow, we need to sleep today. But somehow on a longer timeline, that doesn't translate to like a month or a year. So in my business, we actually plan twice a year. July, we don't do client work. We work on the business and we do a lot of internal reflecting. It is a seasonal rest. It's not in alignment with the actual season because I live in South America and there's no such thing as winter, but I have to force a structural downtime. We do the same thing at the end of the year, 3 weeks off. Yeah. Okay. It's very intentional. It also just works. Nobody's really busy between the end of November and the 15th of January. So why not? But do it on purpose. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, actually, and we were talking about the holiday season being the opposite of what winter is for. Okay. We rush around, we spend a lot of money, we wrap presents, we do this, we try to see everybody, we try to get it all in, we try to squeeze in a vacation, and then we wonder why we are burnt on January 4th. No, no. You should be at a cabin in the woods with no electricity, and you go to bed at 5:30 because it's been dark for an hour. And you sleep for 12 hours. You make some soup, and you snuggle by the fire, you read a book, and then you take a nap in the middle of the afternoon because there's still nothing better to do. You have some more soup, and then you go to bed. But winter in modern society is the opposite. It's full on summer energy, and it's just cold out because we have not accepted or acknowledged or claimed our right to rest. And that's feminine. That is the ostracization of what we cannot see. How I can't prove to you that my rest helps me be productive or makes me a valuable member of society. And so I say, well, I shouldn't do it then. I can't, it doesn't have metrics. How productive was your rest? Well, I can't show you that. I might not rip your head off in 2 weeks. So maybe that's good, right? I'm actually genuinely happier, calmer. And yes, I am more productive later. But it's really hard for these things that we cannot touch, cannot measure in a society that masculine is just tangible. Masculine is how many books? How much money? How many hours? And the feminine is something you cannot weigh and measure. Okay. You can structure it in. Your masculine energy can provide and protect space for your feminine. Your masculine energy has to, because if you don't use your masculine to protect and provide the feminine won't. That's not how the feminine works. So Mark is sort of joking, but it is, you need to you have your masculine energy direct and provide and protect time, space, energy for you to rest, and then provide and protect. The planning is, I'm going to build the time for you to go draft your shitty book, the shitty first draft of your book. I'm going to create a container for you to give a runway for that business. Of these different iterations and expressions of masculine and feminine, we each are better at some of them than others. Some people are a lot better at planning than execution, and they would just like to plan for 18 months before they even try. Okay. Some people would much rather evaluate till it's dead before resting and trying again. Okay. But I want you to be looking at and noticing, what energy am I in right now? What am I drawn to? What am I stuck in? Okay. I work with a lot of people on this, and there's a lot of resistance to the initial resting. But then what also happens is people are afraid they're going to get stuck in it because they need it so desperately badly. What happens within like 10 days is you get bored and you get really excited about putting it into action and exploring the possibility of making it happen. And so I don't want you to think that you're going to be there for 9 months. You're not going to be resting for 9 months. Even if you're burnt out and you have adrenal fatigue, you're still going to be planning the next thing. It's going to come and you're going to feel that shift and be like, okay, I want to roll up my sleeves. And as we're thinking about this and playing with each of these phases and sort of tuning into what energy is this right now? What am I doing right now? Like Mark said, scrolling is not resting. Okay. I shared in my Trello, actually, I think it was last weekend or the weekend before. I had a concerted effort and I binged Netflix for 2 days because I was tired. But I woke up with a Netflix hangover. I wasn't rested. I was failing at rest, attempting rest. And so I want you to continue to be aware and start to make a list of what are my false resting things. Okay. Is resting going out with my friends? Maybe it is. If resting, but if resting and staying out 2 hours past your bedtime and having 3 drinks makes you feel like, shh, but then it's not resting. You thought it was, and you said that you were going to go do the thing. But what if like an hour and a beer at 5 o'clock with a friend fills you, but 6 hours and 3 margaritas after midnight isn't? It's a small tweak. You're right. Being with people that care about you is filling. Just be careful not to overfill. 1 episode on Netflix, yes. A season and a half in a day, probably not so much, right? So I want to go through it again and touch on a couple of different points and then open it up for conversation if that's okay. That works? Okay. Everybody's into this so far? It makes sense? We're tuning in some things? Okay, cool. So the piece that I think I want to wrap up with is really observing yourself. When am I refueling? And that's what rest is. That's what winter does. When am I getting the energy for the next project? When am I recharging? Because although we can, it does not serve us to just keep running on empty. Somehow humans do. No machine, no plant, no animal does. But humans have figured out how to run on empty. So what fills you with actual sleep? Passion, right? I am so passionate about this. You can't get me to stop, but it's because I've rested and I'm ready to go. And then how and where and what does planning look like? What does that taking the idea, what's the blueprint process, right? Want to build a house, cool. Well, you got to draw the blueprint. And then we got to get into the back, like behind the walls, not just where does the sink go, but where are the pipes and where's the electric behind all of that? Where and when and how? What does that energy feel like for you? And based on the project that you're devoting yourself to, what is it? What does it look like? In writing, that is definitely outlining your ideas. In business, it can be a lot of different things. And it doesn't happen just once. It happens at the beginning, but it absolutely doesn't happen once. It can happen quarterly, annually, daily, right? What's the service? What's the thing? What am I creating? How am I tweaking? Anybody have any ideas of what or where or when or how that feels, that energy? Like it's a planting seed energy, but it's the, at risk of sounding silly, it's the manifesting before the doing of the thing. But it's more than just in your head, right? There's a lot of detail that goes into getting from A to B. Anybody have any? Yeah.
What is the exact question, Sarah?
So if we're talking about like, what does rest look like? How do you experience it? How can you recognize that you're creating it for yourself? I want us to move into the next sort of the spring, the creation, masculine planning. What is that? How does that manifest for each of you?
The rest itself, you're saying? Like, what does rest look like? Or the
No, moving from rest to the next stage. The next stage is planning. It's masculine. So I have this idea, I have this inspiration. How do I, right? I mean,
so like a to-do list or something.
So
I have
a
big
to-do
flip
list,
charts all about my
Right.
world, all the walls here.
right? And so that works for you, right? Like I see the project, but even before your to-do list, you have to understand a lot to know what you need to do and then prioritize what you need to do, right? It happens so fast for so many of us that we don't always recognize that we're planning. That means it's a super skill, it's a superpower. Like, okay, I'm restructuring the finances of my business. I know that I'm doing that. I'm going to read a book about it. I'm going to come up with a plan. I'm going to talk to an advisor. I need to learn some things. I need to structure some things.
it's a
do a lot of-
difficult question because it's
It
so
is a
natural,
difficult,
right?
what, and
Right,
that's,
because it's happening all the time. For me, you know how
Yep.
much I overthink everything.
Yep.
So I'm always like,
but and it's masculine, but it's different than I just did a workshop and I want to know, like, how did it go? That's different. It's the same sort of muscle, but with a different purpose. And the reason I want us to talk about it is because these things are subtle and we do them so often and almost automatically. But if we don't recognize which phase we're in or what we're doing, and men especially, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs can go through these 4 cycles in a single day, right? I wake up in the morning. What's my intention? What's my plan? Great, I'm going to go do it. Like, before I go to bed at the end of the day, how did it go? Did I do the things I set out to do? Yes, no, why not? How am I going to do it better tomorrow? That is so obvious to us that we don't recognize that we're doing it. But there is this underlying operating system that if you can see it, you can also say, you can recognize when you need a little bit more of something.
So I think you're hitting on something for me in that I'm in the process of redoing a program. And so even this is giving me a lot of ideas of things that I want to add or change or whatever. And I've been in a holding pattern for like a month and a half of not doing anything, knowing I need to do it. And it's been like push, pull, trying to force it, can't force it, doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
I mean, so I feel like there's a piece of me that needs to rest and to stop worrying about it. And yet at the same time, I want to be planning and gearing up because I feel like that's part of the energy that's holding it back is the universe saying, well, you haven't even built this new program and yet you're trying to sell it. And there's so I'm a little confused on the season of timing.
That's fair because, and this is fantastic because we automatically will say, well, I'm supposed to spend the same amount of time in each of these phases or the same amount of energy. And no, you don't have to. You can spend 5 minutes if you're like, oh, why did I make the program in the first place? Why am I tweaking it? Oh, okay. Planning can literally be, what one thing can I do today to move myself forward, cross something off my list, make some progress so that I don't stay stuck for another 6 weeks. Good. Now do the thing right now. Maybe it's a 5-minute task. Maybe it's a 45-minute task, but I'm just going to do it. And then the next energy is, did that work? What else in the system needs revision? Okay, I'm going to think about it and analyze it and weigh it and measure it. Have I offered it before? What's great about it? What must I preserve? What isn't relevant anymore? What can I play with letting go?
That's when my masculine kicks in and says, okay, now you need to finish it. And if you don't finish it, there's something wrong.
This is
That makes sense.
absolutely, because this is the society. This is when an unbalanced masculine exists. And you don't get to stop.
Mhm.
You must keep going, which yes and no. You must keep going, but it doesn't mean right now.
Mhm.
You must keep going tomorrow. Because if you had 60 things that you needed to do between now and launching your program, and you did one of them every day for 2 months, you would be there. But in my understanding, and correct me if this isn't what you're saying, when my masculine says keep going, I think it means like right now. And so it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and my daughter just came home and I'm supposed to unplug, but I'm going to work until 9:45 p.m. and be completely exhausted, fail at parenting, and then beat myself up for another hour and a half, and then crash and do it again tomorrow.
So what I hear you saying and what's resonating with me is that awareness, that deep, deep awareness of, okay, I'm going to work for 5 minutes if I get on a roll, maybe it's 45 minutes, then I will consciously take that break and stop. And then I will be aware of where my energy is and maybe consciously do something else. But it's that awareness instead of the autopilot.
And the drive, right? We do
Mhm.
have so much masculine that if we don't pull the car over and put gas in it, it will stop.
Mhm.
We know that about a car, but we don't know that about this. We just keep
Can I give
driving.
an input on this that's really important? Because obviously I've worked with all of you on some of this, and
Yeah.
definitely myself. Is I used to hate the word compartmentalization, but I realize now that as an entrepreneur, it's absolutely necessary. So I think of things like Tabata timers, or even what's the Pomodoro.
Yeah.
But what I realized for me, I'm just thinking of myself, and I'm sure exactly, is that if I do not intentionally create structure, like we talked about, for those times, and then say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to drop into my feminine and rest, I just won't fucking rest. I won't do the things. So it's like being super intentional about each one of those categories or those things. I mean, at the very least, the resting and the doing. And I
Yeah.
think that that's where I actually even talked to you a little bit about, Kathy. I was like, okay, so you're going to rest this weekend. You're like, yes. And so for me, what I'll do is I'm going to rest. And I'm like, damn, I should be working. I just ruined all my weekend of rest. Then when I'm working, I'm like, fuck, I really need to rest. Like, it's important. And then so it's like, it's
Right.
really being intentional enough to go, I'm going to give myself the freedom to do whatever it is that I'm going to do. Because if I'm working and I feel like I need to be resting, then you need to go rest. And if I'm resting and I'm thinking about work, then I need to be like, do I need to work? No. Okay. Then I need to sit in that space and friggin' rest. And that's really hard for me. So
And
it's just,
yeah, I ended up working this weekend because I couldn't do the resting.
at least you worked though and didn't try to relax and think about work the whole time.
That's true. That's true.
Well, and again, this is resting this weekend doesn't mean resting all weekend long and not thinking about work at any point all weekend. I'm
Right.
sorry. What? You're an entrepreneur.
Aware.
Of course you're gonna think about it. That's okay. You thought about it. I love how our society just finds ways we can beat ourselves up about it. I just got some new deck furniture. Very proud of myself, but this is a really big deal. When I started as an entrepreneur, I was sitting in the most uncomfortable chair and I had a coach and I was like, I literally am sitting in this miserable chair and my coach was just like, buy a new chair. And I was like, I hadn't thought of that. I also didn't have any money to buy the new chair, but I bought the new chair. Anyway, now I bought all this new deck furniture. I can go out there with a bowl of cereal, and however long it takes me to eat my cereal, I can be out there for 7 minutes. I see a bird, I watch a cloud, I have my cereal, sit there for 2 more minutes without any structure or any plan. But I don't need to be there for 97 minutes. And we have these conceptions of what, yeah, maybe I was burnt out before I came out here, but it didn't take me that long to rest. And maybe the planning happens, it seems automatic, or the evaluation of how something went feels automatic. But I want you to start doing it intentionally and be aware of it, even if it's 7 minutes.
I
And
love
then,
the list too, Sierra.
yeah,
And the reason why I love the list is,
there's so many
well,
access points.
I know everybody in this room because I've talked to all of you. We all used to or still do love to have alcohol in our lives, and it like completely drops us in the zone, and like nothing matters, and or whatever you used to do. And I found like it's about the awareness that Kathy talked about, because like being able to drop into those zones, it's how do I drop into that zone, lose everything around me, be in the moment and present, and fall into those spaces without maybe ways that I used to, or what is the new way, or how do I, that's a challenge I've been tasked with, because I no longer have those desires like I used to, but yet I haven't found yet. And I think this whole work for me sums up to just really, like you said, what do those spaces look like? How do you find them? What do they mean to you? And it's like, oh, and it's been quite the interesting challenge for me.
Yeah,
You still
same.
do a really good job with having 2 beers though, dear.
I feel like what Mark's talking about right now is the false resting versus the actual resting, and how I think what hit home for me is reevaluating that regularly, because there are times where, having a bath was my resting period, right? But just as well as I do that you have little kids who are running around, you hear them, they come in sometimes when they're really little. My kids are a little older now, they don't come in anymore, but like that changed completely. Like that used to be my go-to, and now I don't have that anymore. So it's coming back, but though, just realizing and being really aware of those false resting versus resting, I think is so important, and something that we have to do, like month to month even.
Absolutely.
There are social groups that you're hanging out with that used to feel really great, but now there's things that are coming up that don't feel so aligned with you anymore. You have to reassess. So that was a definite aha moment for me, of just realizing that false resting versus actual resting.
Yep.
And how that's going to look different for everyone, and it's going to look different
Exactly.
year to year, month to month for us, right?
What's filling us up now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Like
it
that's the thing.
changes. By definition, it changes. And that's where the straight line doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you're looking for what are the ingredients in the recipe, but how you put them together will change over time. And how I wrote one book is completely different than how I wrote the next book. And it's completely different from how I wrote the third book. But the ingredients were still the same for the most part, right? The phases were the same. There's the same way that there's false rest, there's also false planning. You can get caught in each of these phases. There's false doing. Look how productive I'm being because I refuse to move on to the next thing and actually debrief and say that I'm done and I'm ready to look at it. You can get stuck in each of these. And so there is not one right way to do any of this. And what works for me isn't gonna be what works for you, which is why I had you make your list. And what worked for me this time last year won't work for me this time because I'm different, my kids are different, my business is different, the project is different. And that in itself, that's feminine. The fact that it's fluid and that we're not going to write it in stone and force you to do it. And here's how you're supposed to do it. And here's how you're supposed to do it every time, because that's masculine, right? But there is a supranatural cycle. Moon, seasons, hormones, all of it. It is there. You have access to this superpower. And to only choose a part of it, the masculine part, is to disempower yourself from what could be a lot more fun, a lot more fulfilling, a lot more productive. It seems counterintuitive, but the resting and the let's just try it. Experiment the doing without attachment to the outcome. But it's also that feminine, just try it and see what happens, right? If we want to get it right before we try it, that's masculine. Analyze it and tweak it. No, it's not ready. It's not ready. It's not ready. That is control instead of, because feminine is loose. It is free. It's imperfect. And so Kathy too, the other thing I would say is tweak it, relaunch it, see what happens. We don't have to be so attached to getting it just right, because it was good the first time, it'll be good again, and it might need to be changed again. And that's okay, because then we've built it in. It's not a straight line. There is no destination. There is iteration. So it's already at the top of an hour, but I do want to open it up for anybody. Any reflections, any thoughts, questions? If it's applicable to you, I hope so.
The issue
I
I
had
have is when I do try to rest, I put a guilt trip on myself, and because I feel like I'm not being productive, and that's a challenge for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the ways that I would suggest I mean, having the conversation at all introduces the possibility that each of these stages is important and required. You don't have to go on a 3-week cruise, right? But I challenge you just to start experimenting with it. If I rest for 15 minutes, how do I feel in the other phases? If I and play with rest. If I rest while cooking, is that different than rest how I feel when I rest on my terrace? If I rest with my kids versus all alone, what's the difference? What works, right? So that you can figure it out. But rest correlates to productivity on a longer timeline. And we just need to change that definition. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking too, just in that false resting that you mentioned being like an aha for me, was sometimes when I think I'm resting, that's when my mind tells me I'm not being productive. I'm not, so it's also being very aware of how you're resting and if that actually is resting for you in that moment. Because if I'm actually resting, I don't have those thoughts. I enjoy the moment. I am present. I go for my walk and go to the lake and I see all the things, and it puts me in that grounded state that I don't think I'm not, oh my God, I'm not being productive right now. You know what I mean? So it's really finding that actual rest that really resonates with you, I think is another big key with that to get out of our heads.
Yeah, agreed.
And Jackie, something that you just said triggered me about giving myself permission to rest without the guilt. And I have the Pomodoro and I never use it. So it's like if I gave myself permission and said, okay, for 30 minutes, you can do whatever you want. It's okay. And give myself that permission so I don't feel guilty. Because I have the same issue. The guilt comes in of, oh, I shouldn't be. And just like what you talk about, Mark, with the compartmentalization, I don't think of that consciously because it feels so masculine to even say it. And yet, I think it would really, really work for me with that awareness.
Well, think about this, and I know we have to go because actually Jack and I have to meet right now, but I was going to say is a lot of what you're talking about is what I provide for y'all, right? Is that masculine space to go, okay, cool. And then you can drop into all these pieces, but you have to do it for yourself too. Like you really do. Like I'm such a planner because if I plan, then I can do all the things that need to be done. I mean, some people just can get that natural flow. And I think over time, it does become way more natural. Like I can guarantee you out of everybody's here, it's probably way better than all of us at flowing in and out of that masculine, feminine. But in the beginning, it's like blocks, like step 1,
Yeah.
Step two.
It took me
Step
7
three.
years of playing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it becomes part of who you are. But right now, if that's not who you are, like I literally have to write, I have to do a Dr. Joe meditation for an hour at whatever time, or if I won't do it, I just won't do it. So yeah,
But that's the masculine providing for what you know is good for you, right?
exactly.
And Kathy, you just said something of, if I gave myself 30 minutes to do whatever I want, when I started this, and even still sometimes, I'm like, it's a muscle I haven't used in so long. I have no idea what I want to do. I want to work because it's the only muscle that I know that I have. It is the strong muscle. It is the muscle. And that's how, like, I climbed the stairs. I was using my quadriceps. I was not using my glutes. I didn't even like, was compensating with the muscles that were strong for the muscles that didn't. I had no idea what I wanted to do. You give me 30 minutes, I'm going to scroll, I'm going to Netflix, I'm going to have a glass of wine, because those are the only things that the world has told me that are supposed to fill me up. And in the beginning, this can be really uncomfortable. That's a very good thing. Anything that makes you uncomfortable means you are growing in a place that you haven't strengthened. Imagine 6 weeks from now, you actually have a list of things. If I had 30 minutes to myself today, I know what I want to do because I've taken the time to figure out what fills me up, what I'm passionate about, what excites me, what fills me, what makes me less of a bitch at the end of the day. All of those things, right? But in the beginning, it can be really uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. But I would love to hear how it goes as you play with it, as you struggle with it. This goes into the community, right? So we can have a thread and
Yeah.
questions.
And please, interact in that damn community and get the ball rolling. So yeah, this is amazing though. I love this. I have thank you. I'm gonna steal some
Thank
of
you,
it too.
Sarah. Thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great to spend time with you all and share it with you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Sierra.
Okay.
Have a good
All
day.
right.
Happy
Ciao,
Monday.
ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. Check, y'all be in there in like 2-3 minutes.
Sounds good. See you there.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.